Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Genuine Chit-Chat. This week is another chat with Josh and Wayne. Now, if you tuned in last week, you know that I did have a talk with Josh and Wayne then, but I thought that each part of this chat was basically good enough as a standalone, so I decided to release them not as a part 1 and a part 2, but as separate episodes. Now, if you enjoy this one, be sure to go check out the last episode. The last episode we talk about superpowers and the human culling and a few other sort of morality things. And this one, we talk about religion and faith, and our favourite animals, essentially. We talk about consciousness and a few other things as well, but we kind of speak about what our favourite animals are, both land, mammal, and also extinct animals. So, we talk about quite a few things. When I say favourite animals, I mean it more in the sense of animals we think are really cool and have something really interesting to say about them. So notable animals will probably be more appropriate. Now, at the start of the podcast, we discuss Wayne's faith a little bit because he's a paleontologist and he believes in a deity. So we kind of talk about that as well as sort of general morality surrounding religion. But then after that, we get into the afterlife and consciousness a little bit, as well as forcing your beliefs onto people. And then the rest of the podcast, from about half onwards, is basically about the animals and things. So if anyone's interested really in animals and that sort of thing, then this will be one of the podcasts for you. That just about wraps it up for the intro. Before we get started, there'll be a promo by the Rag Bag podcast by a gentleman called Frank Burton, who has the same last name as I do. And then we get straight onto the show. So thanks as always for tuning in, guys. And after the talk, I'll be back at the end, as usual.
Ragbag is a fortnightly music podcast presented by me, Frank Burton. I play stuff like this. I mean, is this eclectic enough for you yet? What more do you want? I also tell strange stories and engage in some quality listener interaction, although it has to be said most of my listeners are not the greatest calibre of person. I'm only being honest. I'm just hoping someone intelligent is actually listening to this promo. Please, help me out here, guys. Download Ragbag from SoundCloud, iTunes or Stitcher with more information at frankburton.co.uk.
Welcome to Genuine Chit-Chat, where we have honest conversations with interesting people. And I'm your host, Mike Burton.
I think just a quick throwback again to what I said before about the moral thing. I just thought of something else I want to add.
Yeah.
Is also the at risk of opening a whole other kettle of fish, so I'll just kind of just say it and be done with it. But the idea that some people view it is that you can't be moral unless you have religion, and the idea that I'm an atheist, and does that then mean that I'm immoral? What's to stop me from raping and murdering and pillaging all I would like? But I do. And the amount I would like to do that is 0 because it's wrong.
Yeah. And that's a very interesting thing because I'm not sure if we mentioned it in the podcast before, but obviously, Wayne, you are a religious individual, and obviously you're a paleontologist, which is quite unique, but it means it's that open-mindedness of, which what I'm growing into as I get older, which is you believe that there is a deity, there is a God, and that's fine. I'm more in the mindset of a universal consciousness of everything living has a connection. How far that connection is, I haven't figured out in my own mind yet, because obviously we spoke earlier about the sort of mother nature, and I believe there is that balance, and there is that, balance is the best word for it, of all of nature, and maybe there's that tiniest, that thing in your gene that drives you to do it. Maybe there is an interconnected subconsciousness that forces the balance. Maybe, I don't know. I don't think, maybe humans will never know. But the idea of, you're a religious individual, so obviously I imagine you don't, but do you believe that people who are atheist or agnostic are any less moral, or what are your sort of...
No, I don't.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it's the human condition. If you know in your mind what's right and what's wrong, you don't have to be religious to have a voice in the back of your head saying you shouldn't be doing this. If something doesn't feel right, if something puts you off, or we have the law. The law isn't religious in any way. But it says this is what you can do and this is what you can't do. You break the law and you will be punished for it. There's nothing religiously undertoning about that.
I mean, it should be, but then we see how far the separation between church and state goes in America.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. I mean, like I say, religion has become a doctrine unto itself. It's become almost a law unto itself, and it's all about self-righteous persecution of everyone beneath it, which is again, this elitist attitude. I don't mean to scorn or anything, but when people call me religious, I'd like to be I'm not religious. I just have a faith.
I apologise then, I won't call you... what you have a faith, then I'll use that in the future, then I'll... it's okay, obviously... Not everything I say is going to be perfectly acceptable for everyone, but that's fine. I have a friend Dom who, I don't necessarily think he likes being... Because the problem is also, even when I call myself an atheist, that there's a what's the word?
Preconception.
That was what exactly
about how you act.
Yeah, because then people think that I immediately hate religious people and that I don't believe in anything. And it's not. Some atheists are like that, and that's 100% fine. And obviously, if I say that you're religious, then obviously that does come with a brush of, oh, he believes in all the doctrine, he believes this, and so yeah, I completely will take that to heart. And you have a faith, that's fine. My mate Dom, he's the same. He believes there is a God. He believes there is a heaven and a hell. He likes some of the religious texts because he believes that some of them do give some stories, but he's not a lot much like yourself, which is no, he does believe he's got modern values because it's morality above religion, because religion isn't morality. It has, I think there's been a lot of use of religion with the moral guidelines years and years and years ago, where we didn't have we didn't have a governing body in the same way. We didn't have laws, as you say, to tell if you murder someone you'll get punished. It wasn't so easy. There was obviously in Roman times things like that, there was a degree of that, but the policing of the world wasn't so ubiquitous. Essentially, it wasn't so in the Western world. It was easier to get away with stuff. So you did need a thing of, I've used this example before, but when you have children, when they're really young, they don't understand right or wrong. The way you teach them is by punishment and reward, because they're too young to comprehend what actually could be doing a good thing is. It's like when you train a dog or anything like that. Anything that hasn't fully developed in the right amount of consciousness yet, the way it understands is positive and negative reinforcement. And that's what we needed back hundreds of years ago, maybe thousands, we needed a religion to say, don't kill people, because you'll then be suffering forever. And because people may not understood fully of you shouldn't do bad things to be bad because it's a bad thing to do, we needed that. And as we've grown more, and I think that the culture and a lot of the lessons learned from religion is very important. And I believe that the community aspect of it is very important as well. But it's when people start to become tribal with it, which is where the issues lie. Obviously, a lot of it in the Middle East and those sort of conflicts and things like that, and a lot of the religious extremism, it comes from you thinking that your own opinion on something, because that's all belief is, faith, religion, any of it, it's an opinion.
Yeah.
It's just none of us know. And what I've said before is the one thing everyone knows for a fact is we have at least one life. That's the only thing everyone knows. We have at least one, and that's this one. We might have had many before. There might be reincarnation. There might be heaven. There might be hell. There could be all manner of things. It could be, my thing is, maybe your consciousness becomes one with the universe and you live a completely different existence because you have the same senses in the same way. You can't have sight and hearing and taste. You live on as some other consciousness. Maybe. I don't know, because no one knows. Because if that does happen, you go through that transition, you're not the one you were. You've become something else completely. So how would you... None of us really remember, maybe the odd screenshot moment, but before you were like 5, some people say they remember certain bits, but no one remembers what you're like when you're 5 compared to what you're like now, because you didn't remember, you didn't do that. So maybe in previous incarnations of this version of consciousness, we didn't. Or... maybe there isn't. Maybe that's because when you die, that's the end of it, you're in the ground. And that's okay. It's one of those things that people like to use their own agendas to forward things, and it's upsetting to me, especially when you see homosexuality and abortion and euthanasia. It always becomes this left and right issue. because a lot of the time the right is associated with religion and the left is associated obviously with that more hippie liberalism, free love thing. And it's just like, can we just not agree people should be able to do what they want to, you know? But that's my rant
Yeah, I mean,
about that.
you know, like I say, religion comes with a lot of doctrine. We had a guy down in Pompey, right? He used to wear a billboard, and he literally just used to quote freaking hellfire and brimstone and literally condemn people. I walked past him, being a Christian myself, and he said, "Do you realise you're going to hell?" And I was like, no, because I'm a Christian. He was like, "Oh, well, you can carry on then." And then kept scorning people. I walked back to him and I said, "You are a disgrace to what we are trying to, you know, support." I said, you know, Albert Einstein said himself that science without religion is blind and religion without science is false. So it's like, religion is a primitive form of science. It's a way of understanding the things around us. It has now, if I may use the term, evolved into science.
That's an interesting
So
point.
it's like, you just have to be acceptant of one doctrine evolving into another. You know, the thing about tradition, yes, you can keep it from a cultural background. I completely agree with that. But if you then refuse to accept that times are changing, just from an evolutionary perspective, you will become extinct. It's like, just by nature itself, your doctrine, your ideology, everything about you is going to become extinct because you'll just be forgotten. So it's like, you either move, you either adapt, or you're not going to at all. So you have to stop living in this religious self-righteousness, you know, saying, oh, my doctrine is the one doctrine. You know, there's so many people in religious faith, even in, you know, our own church, which stand up and they say, oh, there will be a day when all people will get up and they'll deny their false gods and all this kind of stuff. And I'm thinking, what right do you have to say that our God is the true one? You have no right whatsoever. So, you know, I used to be of that mindset. I used to be like, right, I'm not going to talk to Jehovah's Witnesses because you're completely deluded. Even though it's exactly from the same text, just a little bit of that text. You know, I watched a history program, Forbidden History, and I'm like, afterwards, it's like, do you realise that the Bible that Christians have is only half full? And I'm like, what? And I'm like, the Vatican have the other 18 books. I'm like, you freaking what? There's so much we don't know. And it's like all this stuff about, you know, Jesus having a relationship with Mary Magdalene, all this kind of stuff, the Da Vinci Code. It's like, why would that take anything away from your faith if you knew it? If the Vatican have these 18 books to the Bible, why are they not showing them? Possibly because it denounces the entire faith? I don't know, but it's up for debate. If you have a moral conviction, and like I say, this is why I don't like being associated with the term religion. Not to scorn you, obviously.
No, that's fine.
I mean, a lot of respect.
I want you to be honest. Is the whole thing here? Like, I'm not, even when I don't want to identify people as thing. I want people to tell me what they are, almost like transgender people. If I call you a guy, you're actually a girl. Tell me once, I'll try and remember. So it's fine. I don't take offence.
Yeah, that's good. So it's like, you know, I don't like being associated with the religious doctrine, because it's like, you have to be closed-minded, you have to think in a certain way, and it's like, you have to associate with a certain amount of people. You can't accept the fact that they're, you know, that heaven, if I may use the term, is populated by all the gods. You have no idea that you might get up there and you might, you know, be playing table tennis with Ganesh. I mean, how awesome would that be?
That would be pretty
freaking
cool.
8 arms going at one time. You'd just be like, oh my god, this is amazing. But
You just have to accept at that point you are going to lose.
yeah.
And you say, oh my god, and they go, what?
It's 8 arms and a prehensile trunk.
Exactly.
That's another battle.
Basically 9 arms. Like, you're not
So,
gonna lose.
so what we've confirmed is that Ganesh would be the greatest table tennis player ever. That's
Yeah,
what we've all come to.
we've all come to that conclusion.
That's the one true faith.
Hinduism at 1 point, everyone else 0.
It's like, right, so, you know, everyone is allowed to believe their own faith or lack of faith. That's fine. It only becomes a problem, like I say, when you're trying to force that belief onto someone else. That's when I disagree with it, because, you know, it's like evangelism and street preaching. You know, you look at how much damage that it did to the native tribes in America because of the Puritans and the Quakers, all these different kinds of things. You know, they were thought to be, you know, demonic because of the way that they worshipped or their culture. And it's like, we've used religion as such a pretext for the most heinous crimes. You look to the Spanish Inquisition, you look to the Crusades, all these different things that have been under the banner of morality and you know, the Christian dogma. And it's like, a lot of people still like to associate themselves with that, but don't remember it as such.
Yeah, I totally agree.
So it's like...
So they forget about it when it's convenient to them.
Exactly. Yeah.
100%.
It's like they'll use a dogma to support their argument, and then when you conflict them on that, oh, that part isn't in the Bible, but you literally just quoted it. Oh yeah, but you've taken it out of context. Well, how do you know? Because the whole thing is open to
interpretation. Well, it's like when I was talking, because my buddy Dom, we had an hour-long discussion about just his religious views and mine, sort of. And one of the key things he said, I identify as a Christian, but I don't follow the Bible, because even if you believe that, say, even argument's sake, the Christian God is the one God, he is perfect, let's argue all that's true, okay, but he didn't write the book. He, at the very most, he helped a man write the book, or helped men write the book, that sort of thing. Whereas even if in the first instance it was written down perfectly, argument's sake, the word of God, the amount of translations, the alterations that the Vatican and anyone else who's been in power over the thousands of years that it's been out, all the sort of changes they've made to it and things like that, it's like they tweak things about it. They changed, I think it was the word ass or something. This is years ago. They changed it. So when they do that, it's like, well, what else have they changed? Well, and as you say, with all the other parts of the books and things like that. And there's the ancient sea scrolls, which is they were found. Apparently, they're part of. They're written, even some of them predate some of the Bible things. So it's just like and there's that whole gap between Jesus' life there's like I think it's like a 12-year gap or something. When he was young, he was like a kid, and then suddenly he's 30.
Yeah,
and it's like, well, then even in that argument, even if you did say, yep, Christian God's the one, it is perfect, everything's fine, but humans have had way too much into changing with it and changing the doctrine, which is why you can't have too much faith in the doctrine.
Exactly.
I think... sorry, you go on.
That's right, you carry on.
I think the easiest way to talk about this is just say that, like, amongst the three of us here, religion is a personal thing. Just keep it personal.
Yeah.
Like, it is what it is to you. Don't try and push that on other people.
100%.
Whether that's your religion or lack thereof. Why does it matter?
It's a good example. Like the three of us, as we've been talking for this, obviously you two, we're all quite science-driven people, even though obviously you two are a bit more knowledgeable about these sorts of things. But you're science-driven. But, I'd say, with yourself having faith, I'm more in the hippie sense of I'm not saying I'm a spiritualist or anything, but my ideas and where I'm going for is more of a hippie, universal consciousness, everyone sort of thing. And then Josh has the more of the standard atheist thing, which is completely, they're all fine. We can all have these, because at the end of the day, that one opinion doesn't actually really change anything. You're still a paleontologist, you're still a marine biologist, I'm still just a podcaster.
I'd also make the point that I would consider me being atheist as my personal viewpoint. In terms of being scientific, I would say that the scientific position should be agnosticism. Because the very point is about evidence, is science and evidence-based stuff, is that you don't prove something, you disprove it. And lack of evidence, as a phrase that I very much like to say, is lack of evidence is not evidence of lacking.
Yeah,
so because there is no evidence doesn't mean it's disproven, it just means we've had no evidence either way.
Exactly.
So I take it as my personal viewpoint that there is no overarching deity or God or anything like that, or mixture of thereof. But to say that that's from science is not what I take it as.
Yeah, and that's a real good way, and you're honest about it, and that's a good thing to have. I mean, fossils are the big one. Obviously, being a paleontologist makes it even more handy with the fossils. Just because there isn't a fossil of something doesn't mean it didn't exist. Because we don't have evidence of it, it just means we haven't found that yet. Yeah. That's the whole idea of it. So yeah, I agree with you completely with that point, Josh. That idea of the evidence thing is great, and it's your faith shouldn't, and with us here, it doesn't affect our pursuits in anything. It's just a mild. It's almost just when you're by yourself, you're having those thoughts, whether you need something. Some people like to have religion or faith as just almost a meditative thing. Just when you're by yourself, it's comforting to think if you're praying to a deity, that can be comforting. It's all these sorts of things. It is your own. It's almost religion and faith. You can have these open discussions and talks about your opinions on stuff, but almost like music. You can talk about music all day long. At the end of the day, the main thing about music is, excluding obviously listening to music in group areas, when you're by yourself in your car driving, if I like, for example, really, really, really heavy metal, I can listen to that. If no one else likes it, so it's not about them, it's about me. When I'm by myself, I want to listen to music. When I'm by myself, I do or do not want to pray to a god. When I'm by myself, I do or do not believe trees have consciousness with everything else. It's all down to just your own personal thing. So, and I think that's a real good way to sort of a part of this conversation of the morality, the euthanasia, all that sort of stuff. I think that's wrapped up very nicely. So if you guys have something...
The one thing that I will say that really frustrates me, it's not even people that are very outwardly religious and trying to even push it. That annoys me, but it doesn't actively frustrate me. Is I don't believe that you're one of these people, for obvious reasons. But when someone uses their faith and their religion as a as a form of removing their personal responsibility, basically saying, it's all there's the end plan, or some other phrase that they use to remove agency from themselves. Do not have. I was like, it's not my problem. It's not anything that I have control over. So it is all to do with the things going on in the background. And
disassociating from it.
Yeah. I think that is what it frustrates me, but mainly purely because it's such a dangerous viewpoint to have.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you there. Yeah. I think with this then, I'll loop it back around and we'll go on to the thing that the initial reason this podcast was organised.
Say hours later.
It's good. It's been a very, very rich conversation. I think it's great. But, with all these sorts of conversations, one of my almost jobs as a podcast host, in a sense, is at certain points, I kind of call it, it's almost like a junction at a conversation. Because from this point, we could go, say, left, and we could then talk about moral philosophy. We go straight on, go even deeper into religion, or we could take another turning and go somewhere else. And I think so at this moment where it's kind of that momentary pause between subjects, I think I'll loop it back round to the thing I organised the podcast for: animals.
I choose to go the wrong way around the roundabout.
Just crashing fuck you guys. Okay, well, I was going to say, so obviously with yourself being essentially a marine biologist and yourself being a paleontologist and me going to quite a few zoos, we have I'm joking about myself, but obviously things about animals. So I thought it'd be quite cool for us to discuss. I think the idea was a marine animal that's alive, a land animal that's alive, and then an extinct animal that's alive. It's like a general, if we'd have to stick to these lines, it's not that important, but that's like a nice sort of general talking point of things. So let's start with Wayne then. What you can choose out of the three, which one would you like us to start on? And you can tell us yours then, whichever of the three subjects.
For marine, I'd probably go sort of like deep sea, like viperfish.
Go on then, what's a viperfish then? I'm going to look it up quickly, but...
It's basically, a deep sea sort of, I class it in similar to angler, but it's got like bioluminescence. It uses...
oh, Jesus, that thing is terrifying.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
It's got natural bioluminescence that it uses to attract prey. I think it has bioluminescence in its bottom jaw as well as along its flanks.
It's like a giant barracuda anglerfish thing.
Like extendable jaws as well.
Yeah, because you know about this because you're a marine biologist. I didn't know about this. Wow. Sorry. Yeah. I'd recommend people look that up.
So it's it's definitely one of the sort of freaks of nature sort of thing. But it's just amazing what in such an unexplored environment what evolution can just say. Do you know what? Let's just put a bear trap on a fish and see how it looks. And it's just like, it's amazing.
Yeah, wow. I'm pretty sure, it's stereotypically from the pictures that you see when you search, I'm sure that the one you have there has huge eyes and the mother of all underbites.
Well, that's the picture I was gonna. that's the picture I've got. Okay. I did look on Google and I just saw there's loads there. So you can take that. What I was going to do is I was planning on just making little notes of what we put, and then I was probably just going to some of these, because some of the animals I'm going to say, because I don't know many exciting animals. Mine people are all going to know of, but I know there's a couple of animals because we briefly touched on this before.
I was thinking of that picture there. Obviously, no one can see this, but
Yeah, well, what I was thinking is I'm going to do is I'm just going to, I'm probably going to save a couple of these photos, put it as like a...
link in the description below.
to a degree, but on Instagram, just so people know for the podcast in the future, I try and post vaguely relevant pictures for certain things I post on Instagram. So for this one, some of the animals we mentioned, I'm going to note them down, save some pictures of it, and then if people view this on Instagram, you can see some of the pictures of some of the animals and stuff, or you can just Google it. But so the viperfish. So what else apart from so it's got a luminescence, it's got a terrifying bite. I assume it's one of the top predators of the deep.
Yeah, I'd imagine so. There's not anything that I know of that predates it, but
Well, they're not particularly big as far as I'm aware.
no.
30
A
to
lot
60
of stuff
centimetres,
that gets
yeah,
down there isn't actually particularly big.
No.
I imagine it's because of the scarcity of the food.
Food resources.
There's no like central hub in the same way.
There's two like polar sides to it. It happens with the deep sea. It happens with the poles as well. Things are either small or they're absolutely fucking huge.
Yeah.
And they have a metabolism that's slowed down so much that they can live for a ridiculously long time, get ridiculously big, even with the scarce food resources.
Is that polar bears? Is that one of the examples?
No.
Like the megamouth shark
I think so.
from the deep.
Polar bears just are big because they have that blubber and stuff. It's not like they're still mammals. They
so
don't
you're
have
talking
that
like-
slow metabolisms and everything. They haven't got slowed down. This is like things like the Greenland shark that sees such scarcity of food and things that its metabolism is slowed down to the point where it gets to a normal size of a shark, or maybe even a little bit bigger than, not like as big as say something like a great white, but it gets to a respectable shark size, but it can live for like 300-400 years
Oh wow, okay.
because its metabolism is so slow that it just doesn't go through that process.
Interesting. Oh, okay. That's something new every day. That's for the point of this podcast. So yours are the viperfish. Go on then, Josh. What's your marine animal then? If you need some time, then I can...
Ask me one on something else.
Well, I'll say...
No,
I can say mine if you want, to give you a little bit of time to think.
did I say something? No, I said my land one earlier. I can't remember what I said on my sea one.
That's fine.
No, go for it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mine would probably just be... It's kind of boring, but either an orca or a dolphin. Which, just because of... They're so... That's kind of everyone's almost baseline, simple... You know... Actually, no. Yes. No. I'm going to put that... I'm going to side note. Octopodes...
Octopodes.
They're so amazing, which is basically the correct plural for octopi,
Yes,
which is what
because
Josh has told me.
For context, octopodes is the plural for octopus, because octopus is of Greek origin, not Latin. So going to octopi, which would be the normal Latin way of changing it, is wrong.
There we go. So there you go, guys. Octopodes, not octopi. And I remember that. It's tempting because, like, obviously dolphins and orcas, they're both they're the same family, aren't they? Of all that sort of stuff.
Delphinidae.
Yes, so dolphins, orcas, yes, are more in the dolphin side, but in wider context, they're cetaceans.
Yeah. So it's with that regard, and they're both such unbelievably intelligent. And I know that whales and dolphins both have not only their own dialect, which we can't understand, but they have accents. And that if you get dolphins or whales from different areas across the globe, they speak in the same general way, but not exactly the same. And it's very interesting because England or America are both very good examples of that. I think England almost a little bit more because in Scotland, they still speak English. Obviously, you can't speak Scottish, but people in Scotland speak English. Compared to someone down south, not only is the way you pronounce things, but it almost sounds like you are talking a different language, but you actually are talking the same.
To fiddle with terminology, the way that it is, because to say they have a different dialect to us would be wrong, because that would mean they speak the same language.
Yeah.
They have the way that they communicate is essentially a language, and it has been shown that they have regional differences in that language, which would be called dialects.
Yeah, precisely.
So they have different groups, like what would be called a dolphin or orca pod, may communicate in a slightly different way to another pod.
Yeah. It's almost like tribal humans. You can even argue friend groups, even go down to that low level. Me and you and Reese and that lot, we say things to each other, which are words, which I'm sure many friend groups have, that no one else, it's almost memes. So look, in another way, I know that's
Like
not...
inside jokes.
Yeah, exactly. So there's also that level of things, you know, and obviously dolphins, I know, are one of the animals that are very intelligent that choose to make themselves intoxicated. They chew on, I think it's pufferfish, is that one of the...
Yes.
Yeah, and that makes them, it's a mild hallucinogen or something like that. It's along that lines. And
They pretty much bite, don't kill, but just bite pufferfish
yeah.
to get high.
Exactly. And elephants, they're one of the most intelligent mammals, and obviously they drink, I think it's fermented tree sap, if that's correct, and they get drunk off that because they like to do that.
It's not one I've heard, but I don't disbelieve it.
But Wayne's nodding and he's the paleontologist, so it's definitely right. But that's what I've heard. It's those sorts of things and humans obviously do it, and obviously something a lot of people know about dolphins is that they have sex for fun, for enjoyment, not just for reproduction, and that's what humans do as well. So I'd say probably I really love octopodes. I think that you could almost have a whole podcast about octopodes, and maybe we will return and just have like a deep sea sort of episode. But I think for me, it's going to be dolphin/orca due to their intelligence, which makes marine world and sea world and all that sort of stuff so unbelievably sad. Dolphins and orcas in captivity. Like I used to go to those places when I was younger, when I was in Tenerife and stuff, and you see these dolphin shows. This is amazing, and it is. And then when you get a bit older, which I haven't been to any of those places since. I've been to zoos and stuff and a couple of aquariums, but no Sea World things. And the animals look so upset and so sad, and you just think of it almost just logically, okay? They have the whole ocean to prowl, and they generally do move around a lot. I think, do they migrate quite a bit?
Yeah.
So obviously migrating is hundreds if not thousands of miles. So compared to having an area, it's like having a human literally live in a room for their entire life. And what happens then is humans go fucking mental. Well, they're...
Cabin fever.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Cabin fever, precisely. And humans as well, we can't do that. And dolphins and whales, for all we know, they're as intelligent as we are. They have been shown to have incredible cognitive and problem-solving ability. They can understand commands. And also, I think it was in one of the Blue Planet 2 episodes I watched, that dolphins and other creatures that are different species communicate with each other. Like, I think it's certain whales and dolphins talk to each other, and they can sometimes clash a little bit, but also play. And they can also sometimes, if there's a huge amount of fish that they're trying to sort, they can all organise themselves as separate pods of different species communicating to hunt together. That's that's so brilliant. That's so amazing, and they're such cool animals. So I think mine's going to be that sort of vagueness of orca and dolphins. But what about yourself? Have you noticed it?
I'm probably going to go with the whole thing about just in general cephalopods.
Okay,
so
yeah.
Octopus, squid, cuttlefish.
I thought you were going to say cuttlefish, something like that.
Because you mentioning it reminded me, and then the other thing would be whales and dolphins for other reasons as well. But the whole thing just about squid and cuttlefish and all that sort of thing, their just intelligence is ridiculous. And also just the ability that they have with their skin for both changing the colours, making patterns, and even modifying the shape and texture of their skin for such near close to perfect camouflage is
immediately, is instantaneously
ridiculous. That ability is crazy.
There's a theory that I heard, which I saw on the news the other day, and obviously this isn't cemented. Obviously, this is just a theory.
This is going to be about them being aliens.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
There's just that thing of people. It's been kind of rumored a little bit of people thinking about, but then there might. I don't know if it's been. There's a tiny amount of evidence now, or if it's just a larger amount of scientists have that more idea of consensus of they believe it could be, because they're so different from anything else that basically that's on Earth at the moment.
They can the shape of an octopus eye, or particularly cuttlefish eyes, means that it's something to do with that. Means they can see polarized light, so they can distinguish between planes of light, which is one thing. They are literally blue-blooded. Because I'm sure everyone here, where hemoglobin is in our blood, it makes it red. That comes from the iron that's in our blood cells. It's what in chemistry is called a metal ion complex.
Okay.
In cephalopods, they have a metal ion complex as well. Ion as in ION, not iron as in IRON.
Yeah.
But with them it is with copper, and that's called a hemocyanin.
Oh, okay.
And it literally means they have blue blood.
Okay, that's awesome. Yeah.
So.
And what's the thing about with octopodes as well? They have the donut-shaped brain, and their esophagus is between that.
Oh yes, their brain is shaped like a donut. It's like a ring, and their gullet esophagus goes through their brain.
Yeah.
And that means that the way they eat with their beak, as pretty much every mollusk does, because they are mollusks, they're somewhat closely related to snails and slugs and all that sort of thing, and clams and all that sort of stuff. They have something called a radula, which is like a super exaggerated version of a cat's tongue, where the cat has the rough tongue.
Yeah.
It's like that, but it's like a tongue that's coated in tiny teeth.
Yeah.
So they bite off a chunk of food and then just scrape it, and it takes all the takes it off particularly.
Yeah.
So it's like little tiny chunks that they can travel through. Because if it ate something that was too big, then it would literally rupture its brain and it dies. They have
Best feel of my life.
They have 3 hearts. They have 1 main heart and 2 branchial hearts that help with circulation because of all the limbs.
Yeah.
Their limbs essentially have their own nervous systems to the point where they can act independently.
I've heard about that.
And
Yeah.
the octopus, in particular, one of their arms is literally their penis. They just have the big dick on the end. And it's funny because they're worried about, they're quite tentative about things. They'll be like keeping their distance and quite tentatively do the reach around to give the female the sperm pouch.
Yeah.
Just there you go.
That's amazing.
I say no one has referenced the hand motions that I'm doing right now.
No.
Nor you may know that suggestion alone might make you feel uncomfortable.
Yeah, just the reach around and Josh quietly making noise and us giggling.
But then the dedication that they have to their young as well. An octopus, a female octopus, after it will take multiple males' sperm and use it to fertilize a load of eggs, so they're getting more than one male parent. And then it will lay loads of eggs. It will not eat for the entire time that those eggs are developing. It will sit there protecting them. And once they hatch, and they hatch as the tiny little...
They're adorable.
Little mini things. They're tiny plankton. So tiny. And after that, the octopus mother is basically like, yep, I've done my job and will die.
Wow, yeah. That is a...
They are
hardcore.
incredibly dedicated parents, pretty much.
Yeah.
Up until the point where the eggs hatch.
Yeah, well, that's amazing. Okay, well, that's a good, nice roundup for marine animals. Then, did you want to continue on to the next one, Wayne, of either land or extinct?
I think for land, it would have to be like the anaconda.
Okay.
I just love big snakes. It's just.
Would you boop that snoot?
I don't understand the reference.
Oh, you haven't seen Booper Snoots? Oh, they're adorable. Have you seen? They're basically it's a cute name. It's cute names for snakes. They're like their nose is their snoot. So you boop. And have you seen the Instagram of snakes of hats?
Oh yeah,
That sort of thing where they've got a lot of it. It's like boop the snoot. And it's like a little cute, tiny little python. Oh, they're adorable.
So the question here is, how do you measure a snake?
What do you mean?
How do you measure a snake?
I don't know.
In inches, because they don't have any feet.
Oh, for fuck's sake! That is a terrible. That's like a dad joke.
yeah.
Oh Christ! You made Wayne regret choosing a snake now. Is there anything of anacondas? Is there some sort of how far back do they go? Do you know? Have they been their current sort of form? If you don't, I know that you're being a paleontologist.
Going into the extinct actually, but I can always use a plethora of others. There was a snake, and this is going to make a lot of people that are scared of snakes very, very afraid. There was an 80-foot boa constrictor called Titanoboa. Its vertebrae is literally like this. It's like the size of a small melon.
Or a human thigh sort of thing.
Yeah.
And that's the size of one of its backbones.
That's one of its backbones. And literally, if it was around today, it'd be hunting elephants, just to sustain itself. But,
wow.
It's just the sheer colossal size of that kind of serpent to scale down to the anaconda, and it's like the crushing force that they have. I think it's only just shy of the crushing force that T-Rex had, which is enough to crush
a car and things like that. Wow, so that is madness.
You think that kind of force being exerted around its prey, they've obviously been found with small children inside them, so literally they have no limit to their strength.
That is crazy. Anacondas, man. Yeah, I think snakes are awesome. I've never really been scared of snakes or spiders, things like that. I mean, I've held tarantulas and stuff before. I don't hugely like it when there's a giant house spider in my house, but I mean, in this house there are quite a few spiders because I'd never kill them because they kill flies, and on the odd occasion we get flies in there, but we don't seem to get that many, and we leave all the windows open like we did last night, but it was so hot. That's cool. Well, I was going to say I'll go on to my favourite land creature. A lot of people. This is a slight tangent. I've asked people on Tinder when I can't think of anything to say of what their favourite animals are. And the amount of people say dogs, it's like everyone loves dogs. That's a cop out answer. You can't say dogs or cats. That's such a cop out.
I'm sorry to anyone that likes dogs.
I love dogs. I think probably all of them. I mean, your family, you've got a dog. You know,
Yeah.
I think dogs are amazing, obviously, but
He's great, but I hate him.
but I'm trying to think because pandas were one of my favourites for a long while because
Can we just let them die already?
well, that's the thing. That's what's so funny about them. They look like big cuddly creatures, but they're actually like we're literally saving them from extinction, even though it's almost like they don't want to be saved.
No, they just they don't like to reproduce. It doesn't happen.
Yeah, they
It's
just can't be asked.
We provide them everything they could possibly want to be able to think, actually, I'm going to procreate with this other panda of the opposite sex. But I'm not going to.
And let's eat.
For like 3 years.
Maybe they're anti-natal.
And then we'll try.
Maybe they're anti-natal.
And it'll be at the wrong time. And they'll be like, no. They are literally, if you could fail at trying to reproduce, and it's not because, infertility or anything sort of thing, pandas are literally taking the gold medal.
Well, they're eating hammers. They eat bamboo, and that's like one of the least nutritious things to eat, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Like it's have everything they could have eaten.
It's a grass.
Yeah. So and it's like they're not necessarily like grazing animals, like deer and the cows. Things not cows. Well, cows do, but like deer are a good example of all deer or antelope. Those sort of things do is they're either eating or running away from things. That's basically, and obviously sleeping. And then they've got the rut, which is that short period of time where they procreate because they have to graze so much to eat so much grass and always be escaping predators. They can't necessarily have that thing where they can have sex all the time because they get killed a lot more often, I imagine.
Red pandas are great though.
Oh, the tree climbers and
Red pandas are fine.
they're like raccoons more. And I'm like,
Well, pandas are more closely related to raccoons. I mean, even the giant panda it looks bear-like, but it's not closely related. It's more closely related to the red panda than it is to an actual bear.
so you're telling me that pandas are closer to raccoons than bears?
Yes.
That's amazing. What species is that? Like, what's the name? Because I know it's not marsupial because a kangaroo, and
They're just
wallabies.
They're not. I don't know specifically what group they'd be under.
Because there's loads of weird ones in there. Because it's like you've got mammals, but you've got like a horse. I will look up. There's a horse which is like equestrian. Then there's bovine, which is like cows. There's feline cats. Obviously canine dog.
Normally mammals overall get broken into. You probably know more about this than me because paleontology background. But there are two groups which are the feline side and the canine side, and it's literally just those two groups.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So yeah, and then there's obviously more than that. I mean,
It's literally those two, and then it gets broken down further.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like that's the main two, and then there's sub ones within that. Because obviously then you can go really deep, like to rodents and things like that as well. So there's a lot.
Was it kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species?
Pardon?
Kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. Slowing it down makes it more difficult.
Yeah.
But it's basically it's the taxonomic list of the way you go down things. So kingdom is like Animalia, Plantae, Archaea,
fungi.
Yeah, like that sort of thing.
Wow.
And then you go phylum would be
Chordata.
Yeah, chordates. You'd have
having you two here, it's just like you have so much knowledge between you, and I know fucking
I haven't
none
done
of
it
it.
in ages. Like going down to that level is difficult for me. Wayne's probably better at taxonomy stuff than I am.
You'd hope so.
Paleontology
If he has a degree in it, we'd hope so.
Yeah.
I've just looked up. It says they're the Proconidae or Prosonidae. That's what it says here, which includes raccoons, coatis, kinkajous, olingos, ringtails, and a few others. So that's adorable. I do love raccoons. They're cute.
So were you saying panda is your favourite land animal? Because you could be objectively wrong there.
I think it's just one of those things where I don't. To be honest, when I say land animal, I mean to be honest, barn owls are. I think white barn owls are so cool, and owls themselves, they're so amazing. Even though they're not actually as intelligent, the irony that the Greeks used to use them as a sign of wisdom, yet they're actually an incredibly stupid animal. In not in proper dumb, but their brains are so small because their eyes are so good. They actually don't have enough space in their head for a large enough brain, which is very funny. But I think I love owls. They're amazing. They're such a great hunter. All sort of cool things. But
And most of their brain would be the visual cortex as well.
yeah, exactly. Whereas pandas are just fun.
It's like Well, it's like when we're playing D&D.
Yeah.
Haha, name drop out how nerdy we are. It's the difference between intelligence and wisdom. Wisdom governs like perception and all that sort of thing, whereas intelligence is going to be processing information.
Yeah.
Like they're very good at being aware and knowing what's going on around them, but you can't give it like a maths problem to do like you could an octopus.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. That's a very.
Because there have been times where they've basically given maths problems to an octopus and it's done it.
There've been a lot of weird things like that. Like that was the octopus that literally constantly was escaping its one of its enclosures.
Oh, yeah.
And they just keep doing it. It happens in Finding Dory, but
Favorite thing. There was a time there was an octopus in a tank, and it was getting really annoyed by like a flickering light apparently.
right.
And so it waited until no one was around. So it's like, if I do this when there's people around, then they're gonna fix it again. It's gonna be annoying.
Yeah.
So he waited and then like did something and squirted water at the light to short it out, so it turned off.
Wow, that is amazing. That is awesome.
Great. It's like, this light is bugging me, so I'm gonna wait until people can't watch, and then just squirt water at it so that it like ruins it.
That is so good.
It's great.
That's awesome. Well, go on then, Josh. What's your if you have a land animal?
I'm gonna go with following on the reptile theme from Wayne. I'm gonna go with the Komodo dragon because it is
such a cool
very
animal.
cool.
Go on then.
It's the biggest entirely land-based reptile. So excluding things like crocodiles and alligators and that, because
they're
they're
semi-aquatic.
amphibious reptiles. Not amphibians, but amphibious reptiles.
Yeah.
The Komodo dragon is the biggest, like, solely land-based one. It actually can run surprisingly fast. And other than that, well, one, it's only found in one place, on the islands of Komodo.
Yeah.
That's where it gets its name.
Far Cry 3.
And it essentially has biological weaponry.
Yeah.
I think we've mentioned earlier before the podcast about the potential that there's been discovered that it actually has some form of venom. But the main way that it will take down prey and why a single bite is so dangerous is because their teeth essentially have serrations at the back. And it's actually similar to what they found actually in, I think, tyrannosaur teeth.
Yeah.
Where things like, they obviously eat mostly meat. And bits of meat, like you might get stuff stuck in your teeth, get stuck back there.
Yeah.
And then they ferment and decay, and bacteria start growing. So a bite easily becomes septic and lethal. So a single bite from a Komodo dragon is often lethal, either now or later.
Yeah, it basically
Because it
gives you
becomes septic, infected, and then the thing dies because it's...
It's such a clever thing that nature has done, because obviously, you know, when you get a wound, there's the ways you die from it is basically either infection or bleed out, and it's basically, well, that is basically kickstarting the infection immediately, and obviously without us humans, we can potentially sort of do stuff to it because we've got antiseptic stuff and also like medicine. But animals, all they've got is certain animals know if they get a certain cut or something, they eat a certain type of leaf or rub up against a certain bush, because like, for example, dock leaves, you know, you get a sting from a stinging nail, you are meant to rub dock leaves on there. But I was actually told by a guy that if you actually grind up dock leaves and squeeze the oil from it onto there, it's actually a lot better for you, the oil itself. But like, animals know that sort of thing to a degree. You know, cats and dogs, I think, eat grass because if they eat loads of it, it'll make them throw up. So if they have a bit of a bad stomach, they'll eat loads of grass to make themselves puke it up. That's clever. That's a similar thing. So obviously with that, the whole it getting infected, there's nothing in nature.
The way infection works is that, as far as I'm aware, essentially what happens, it's not that the infection kills you, it's the fact that a lot of the things that the bacteria that are growing there produce ends up in septicemia.
Yeah.
So your blood becomes toxic to you, basically, which then starts breaking down all sorts of things and stopping all your fundamental processes from working.
Yeah.
So it basically just completely messes with your body's biochemistry and stops it working properly, which then kills you.
Yeah.
So it's not like the bacteria kill you, it's like the things the bacteria produce end up stopping you from working properly.
That's amazing. Yeah.
I mean, the same thing with viruses and bacteria and everything. They don't infect you and go out of their way to kill you. It's like killing you is a byproduct. And especially for things like viruses, it's actually detrimental to them. Yeah. Because viruses in particular need living cells to inject their own DNA into to then be able to produce more viruses.
Okay, yeah.
So if a virus is killing you, it's not doing very good at its job.
Yeah, I see. Okay, well, Oh, sorry, Christ. The last thing then, because we're getting near the 2 hour mark, so it's going to be a nice time to wrap up. Because I know the least amount and you two know the most about things, I'll start with the extinct one because I want Wayne to finish this one off. Basically. I want Wayne to finish this off, I think, because I think he'll probably have the most interesting one, most likely. But I'm surprised you didn't choose tardigrade, though, for one of your animals.
They're not extinct.
No, but I meant we've done land and water. I suppose they're neither.
They're not. No, you said marine. They're not marine.
True. They're like this weird...
They like live in moss and stuff. They're tiny.
Yeah.
They're great. We can talk about them another time.
We'll do more podcasts about animals. Why not? I think with extinct animals, because I barely know any, because well, I'm an idiot. I mean, we've spoken about like one of the ones we've. Actually, I won't say it in case you guys say it. So I'm going to say, I'm just going to go for the standard, simple, boring Triceratops. I've always just thought, obviously dinosaurs are a nice easy one to like, but I just always like Triceratops. I think they're always cool because they're generally they're herbivores from what we could tell. I think is that I'm looking at you for fact checking.
Herbivore/frugivore.
Yeah. So but I know that they were quite good at
fruit.
Oh, okay.
So I know they were quite good at defending themselves against a lot of the big predators. From what I vaguely know, they were like they weren't necessarily the bitch of the dinosaur kingdom. It was like you get certain herbivores, like I know that I think it's Bronto or Bronchosaurus, they've got the long neck ones. They can be...
Brontosaurus is not actually a thing.
No.
There we go.
Never existed.
What about has any of them been the ones with the really long necks?
Oh yeah, like brachiosaurs.
Brachiosaurus, maybe that's the one I'm thinking of.
Yeah.
But...
So basically just say sauropods, it encompasses all of them.
Yeah, the ones with the really long necks that are basically almost the giraffes of the dinosaur world, those ones, like... Even though they would probably kill me quite easily, obviously if something like a team of raptors or a T-Rex or anything went against them, there's basically no chance. Whereas I think with the Triceratops against some of the smaller ones, it had a bit more of a defense mechanism. So I like to think of them as they're the herbivores, but they're kind of the cool ones.
They needed the defense mechanism because they're not big enough.
Yeah, they're
That's
quite
the thing.
stocky as well. They've got the big front hair, that ramming things, don't they? So
which was particularly to protect their neck because it's a bony thing. It's a bony structure, protects their neck from things just biting down onto the neck.
Yeah, and I also think Velociraptor is one of the ones that had the big hook sort of thing.
No, they didn't. Velociraptor was like the size of a turkey.
Yeah.
There's
Deinonychus.
That's
Okay,
the one.
there
That's
we
the one
go.
that I can't pronounce.
Deinonychus. Well, that the one which is they're the feathered one. They're quite tall and they've got the big ass.
They're the ones that Jurassic Park's Velociraptor is modelled off of.
I see, because with
Without the feathers.
because I remember seeing a documentary. It might have been Walking with Dinosaurs or something. It was one of the ones where they talk about dinosaurs and stuff like that, and then they try and recreate parts of it.
It might have been The Truth About Killer Dinosaurs.
Might be because I remember seeing where they were trying to figure out basically
Bill
what
Oddie.
the giant. Sorry.
It was got Bill Oddie in it.
It might be. I've seen this so many years ago. The only thing I remember from it was they were trying to figure out basically the big claw thing on the foot of one of them, and they were trying to figure out what it could have been used for. And they were like, obviously the first idea is ripping, and clawing something ripping, and they got a big slab of pork,
Yeah.
and they stabbed it and tried to put it down, and it wouldn't rip. So okay, but it stabs, but it doesn't tear. So what could that be for? Well, the neck, if it gets in the
Get a proper like jugular vein.
jugular, that was the word, and you get into that, and then bleed out, and that's how they do it. So they
So much blood loss.
and exactly, and they get like you get like
Fatality.
you get like a team of these, or like
Test your might.
what would a term be for a group of raptors or something along those lines?
I don't know. I'd say a pack. Of
Pack,
raptors.
yeah, pretty good one. So it's like a pack of them. Obviously, they hunt an animal. All they need is a couple of them just to get near the neck, and bam, and it's just gone.
And you have like a group of maybe like 6 to 8 of them or something, and they take down one Triceratops, and that would be enough to feed them all for like probably more than a week.
Oh yeah, easy.
Because reptiles, one of the biggest things about reptiles is their metabolism is where they don't, unlike mammals, they don't have to regulate their own body heat, which takes up a huge amount of energy.
Yeah.
So they don't have to as much metabolism, which is why you can go like a snake can go months without food because it doesn't need it.
Yeah. That's very interesting. What are the benefits of interest in a paleological side of you, or biological? What is the benefit of someone being warm-blooded compared to cold-blooded?
It means you being able to regulate your own body heat means that you have much greater control over your own internal bodily processes, like enzymes, all that sort of thing, work best at certain temperatures.
Right.
If your body is self-regulating at that temperature, then it can be doing those processes much more efficiently all the time. It also means that you're not dictated to by the weather and how warm it is, how active and proactive you can be.
Oh, okay. Very interesting.
But in terms of efficiency overall, it's quite low because, reptiles are pretty much solar powered.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I found that out a few years ago. It was madness. Well, go on then, Josh. What's your favourite extinct then?
It's not a favourite, but more so like a kind
Noteworthy.
of like a almost like a guilty pleasure almost, where it's like it's absolutely disgusting and vile, but it's great. I'm gonna pick something called Misothelea.
Right. Okay.
Spelled Mesothelae, something along those lines.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it is something pretense. Back in the day, the atmosphere before essentially what was I think known as some massive Great Fire. The concentration of oxygen in the atmosphere was much greater, like 50% or upwards, and it meant things in general could be much bigger.
Yeah.
And so Misothelea is a spider, or if not a spider, at least an arachnid, and is big enough that if it were alive today, it would probably be hunting things the size of domestic cats.
Did you mention this in the podcast Palaeontology?
I did.
That's amazing. That's great that you both mentioned that. That's fantastic. Yeah, that's obviously people should go and listen to that paleontology. If you're liking this conversation so far, go check out the paleontology podcast.
Not with the walking with dinosaurs thing, but I definitely saw it at one point on some sort of documentary. Like they're just artist impression of it sort of thing for the animations and stuff.
Yeah.
It looks absolutely vile.
It looks
and
quite
I
like a
hate
camel spider, doesn't it? 'Cause
Yes.
I just googled it briefly, and the front fangs of it are pretty huge.
It is terrifying.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad it doesn't exist now.
God.
I'm not someone that's like really scared of spiders. I would not like a pet tarantula or to hold a tarantula or anything like that.
Yeah.
But I'm not like objectively like phobic of spiders. But that thing is like, nope, that can take all of my nope and go somewhere else.
Yeah, I mean, if I saw a tarantula come in this room, I'd be like, okay, that's kind of scary, but they're quite slow moving generally. And then, but if like a spider like the size, you know, huge, like the size of a sofa cushion, is like, no, or bigger. It's like, no. It's like, if I have to kill a spider that I can't stomp on it with a baseball bat, that's too big. That's far too big for me.
I mean, this thing is probably, judging by the size, you know, Harry Potter 2, and there's not Aragog, but all his children.
Yeah.
It's probably just a bit smaller than that sort of size, I'd probably suggest.
Go on then, Wayne, is that true?
Yeah.
It's like, oh yes, that's exactly what this world needs.
Terrifying. Go on then, Wayne, let's wrap this one up with your favourite extinct, if you can actually think of one, because you've studied so many.
It would have to be Megalodon.
Oh yes.
It's basically the biggest shark that's ever lived. It's 50 plus feet. It's twice the size of Jaws, if Jaws were actually real and not some stupid animatronic thing. But its teeth are literally bigger than my hand. I've got a specimen at home actually. For
Why did you not bring this with you?
200 quid. Well, that's just it.
Because it's worth 200 quid, yeah.
If it's 200 quid, I would
send it over.
Definitely send that to me. It'd be great.
But yeah, basically it was like it's a absolute massive super predator. It ate whales, you know, just for freaking pick and mix. Basically, it was absolutely monstrous. This thing. It's recently been discovered, which is kind of a heartbreak, that it isn't a relative of the great white.
Okay.
It's actually dissociated from that. So all the modern renditions that you have for there's a Walking with Dinosaurs special with Nigel Marvin. It's like a 3-part episodic program that's got Megalodon in. If you want to see like an artist's rendition of that, and CGI is relatively decent.
Yeah.
But just bear in mind that it doesn't look anything like a great white, even though its basic structure is undoubtedly similar. And also bear in mind the only thing we have of Megalodon is its tooth and jawbone. That's literally it. Everything else
They
is
don't have anything
cartilaginous.
else.
Oh wow. Okay.
Everything else is cartilaginous, but its mouth, to put it into perspective of a size, its jaw could accommodate a 5-person family.
Wow.
That's how big it is.
We're talking about something that, if we're comparing it in terms of, it's often compared to the great white, if it were to be alive, it could probably just open its maw and take in a great white shark whole and close its mouth again.
fuck. That is, imagine being in a submarine. Imagine, because that's obviously horror films and things at the side, but like, imagine if there was actually a megalodon or two still alive in the deepest reaches of the oceans.
There are theories.
And imagine if like climate change
Unfounded ones, but there we go.
Imagine if like climate change somehow made one. Imagine that's probably already a bad film coming out, or something like that.
Yeah,
but like climate change,
Jason Statham.
Jason Statham. But like have that and like a
It's like
megalodon
the
comes
Meg,
out.
isn't it?
Yeah.
Calling it?
Yeah.
That's the
it
one.
looks like it's almost a spoof. I hope it's a spoof film. It looks like
It's got to be a spoof film if
I
it's
hope
going to
it
be,
is.
yeah. But it, with that, like, imagine like climate changes and then you're in a submarine, like, and it comes up and just imagine just takes a bite out of a huge and rips the submarine. Imagine being in a submarine, which is terrifying enough. It's one of my biggest fears. So I'm never going to go in a fucking submarine. But imagine being in a submarine and having a shark bigger than any shark that you've ever seen exist before, ever. Bigger than a blue whale, is it? Or, so it's a shark bigger than a blue whale coming at a submarine, ripping it in half, and you're so many depths under the, underwater, and you see the teeth bigger than your hand ripping a thing apart to a mouth that can accommodate basically a great white. It's like, no, that is terrifying.
The most terrifying thing about it was around with us. It's only 30 million years old.
Oh god.
So like during the Eocene, while our earliest ancestors were walking the plains of Africa, it was stalking the seas. So no wonder we wanted to jump on land.
Jesus Christ. Imagine that. Imagine when like people from like Christopher Columbus and that sort of thing went over to America in like the sort of wooden ships, and then a megalodon.
It almost certainly would have been open ocean, deep sea style stuff.
Oh, yeah.
It wouldn't have been anything close to coastal water.
God,
ever.
no, of course not. It would
On
be.
the ground and drowned itself.
Yeah, obviously I mean across from like from England and Europe across to America. Is that where the Ariana Trench is?
Down the Atlantic. Is the Atlantic or is it the Pacific that has the Mariana Trench?
I think it's Pacific.
I think it's the Pacific.
Aren't you the marine biologist?
Yeah, I can never remember. I know the Ring of Fire is in the... No, I can't remember that either.
Well, the Mariana...
I deal with biology, not geology.
Touche. It's in the Pacific.
It is the Pacific.
But it is, and I'm terrible with oceans. Is the Pacific between us?
The Pacific is between America and Asia.
I see. Yeah, I've got it here. A picture of it.
The Indian is between the rest of Asia and India, funny enough.
Awesome. Well, yeah, it's past the 2-hour mark now. I think this has been a fantastic conversation about a whole manner of things.
I think one interesting point, though, to raise,
Go on,
which
then.
I don't know if there's ever been mentioned by you before, but one of the things I've been able to do fairly recently is, through fossils, being able to look actually quite closely at skin and extract information enough to help artist renditions is to actually extract pigments and to actually get colours.
That is true. Yeah, I mean that's that has been mentioned in the other podcast. But obviously, I imagine not everyone who's listened to this podcast has the other one. But that's quite a good segue. Of obviously Wayne's been on the podcast before. We spoke about one of his books and the human condition and sort of good versus evil. But we also had one where we talk about just a general idea of paleontology. And one of the things that I think you said about was you were at was it your archaeological site and you found a bit of skin on
On an ichthyosaur.
there you go. Yeah.
Yeah, it's an ichthyosaur skull, roughly about yay big. Probably
Yes.
about
Size of like a standard
size of a
sofa cushion.
laptop.
Yeah.
About a third off of a laptop. But yeah, basically, because it's preserved in something called a conservat Lagerstätte, which is an amazing German word. Basically, it's quickly buried, like all of a sudden buried. They reckon that it's due to like undersea sort of turbidity flows. So you have like this avalanche of the seabed basically, and it just envelops anything and everything. And then it just instantly freezes it because bacteria can't obviously get involved other than that which is housed already within the body.
Yeah.
So the external layer, it's not so much, it doesn't preserve like the first top 3 layers of skin, but everything under sort of the hypodermis and the epidermis, you'd probably end up with this thin layer. And we've got pictures of microscope thin sections of that skin taken from the ichthyosaur. And there was talk of a paper to go into like the pigment side of things, but our SEM broke down at the time.
Oh.
So we couldn't do that.
There we go. So I think that's quite a good thing to sort of round up on. If there's anything else you guys want to add before I wrap
And
up
just
this.
to note how unbelievably rare it is for soft tissues to be preserved. ridiculous.
Yeah, well, you can imagine. So millions. I mean, I'm still astounded we even find fossils. Like, I know, obviously scientifically it makes sense, but the chances, and obviously I think we briefly spoke about it in the paleontology episode as well, of like, it's exciting what the future's going to hold. Of, for example, what's it called? Like when a plane, I think they found out with Göbekli Tepe, I think it was, where you can basically fly a plane over somewhere and they can basically, what was it? You know more about this than I do, I think. Where
No, you were the one telling me.
was I telling you?
Yeah.
Oh no, no.
It was
they use like not sonar or something along those lines.
Geophys, like they use on Time Team.
Yeah, they basically use a thing. There we go. Where they can
radar,
fly a
isn't it?
plane over it, yeah, and they can basically tell how deep things go over the surface. So you can tell if there's like cave systems under the surface, and they can use this way to map things out essentially. So obviously, if they found like huge caves underground or any sort of other things, if they got it pinpoint enough, they could check for sort of biological material that they could look through dirt and go, okay, well in this 10 by 10 mile area of dirt, we found X amount of bones from something. Let's take a look. Let's get narrower and narrower. We'll check that area. And eventually we'd be able to find, rather than almost kind of half guessing, like, oh, someone in their back garden found this. Around here, there's probably some dinosaurs. Let's check the area and hope. Obviously it's not quite that quite that vague, but like the steps we can go with technology, it's going to be very exciting.
I think it's even I'm not giving it justice on how rare it is. Like in terms of just regular fossils, are statistically even now like still incredibly rare for a successful fossilization. Like how many things we've found definite fossils for, but just a piece.
Yeah.
Not the whole thing, just a piece, like a vertebrae or something like that. Or like for Megalodon, just the jaws. But those are already so incredibly rare. Like to say about soft tissue preservation is unfathomable.
Yeah.
Like it is so unlikely to successfully happen that like it's just not even worth going out to look for it. It's like if you find it, gold mine. If not, you shouldn't have been expecting to. Like ever.
And Wayne was on the team that found it because he's amazing.
There was a cliff.
Lucky.
Yeah, luck has a lot to do with it. It's
Definitely.
Down Black Fen in Dorset, like Lyme Regis area, it's just if you have cliff falls, they normally come from sort of the ammonite beds. You're looking at the sort of the belemnite marls and that kind of thing. So they come down from there in the landslips, and obviously all we found was this nodule. And I thought, well, normally nodules only form around organic matter because obviously what you have is this envelope that's created by the bacteria that are obviously feeding on the organism. They create like this cyst type structure.
Yeah.
Which then mineralizes, and then the clay which the limestone is formed from sort of accumulates onto it.
Yeah.
Almost like pelagic fallout sort of thing, like underwater snow, if you will. And that then accumulates into a nodule. Most of the time you find them in places like Morocco, and you split them open, you find 3D preserved fish. But for this case, like I say, it was an ichthyosaur skull of a juvenile female, which you can use anatomical characteristics just to determine the sex. It's amazing. Like what kind of level?
Was like
just by
maybe
the
about the size of.
it was the side of the ventral apex is. So where they're diapsid reptiles, obviously they got like two holes in the top of the head. So obviously what the left is larger than the right in a male, and the right is larger than the left in a female.
Okay.
Oh wow.
This is just to do with reptile skull morphology, is that they have holes in their skulls in certain places.
Oh, why?
Just the way they are.
Why do you have like the little things like hair in your skull?
Dimples.
It's just
Well,
that's
dimples
how
outside the
it's
skull.
Yeah.
Well, I was thinking.
I was gonna say the size of the skull itself was like you say about the size of a rugby ballish.
Yeah, sort of like that. Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. That's great. Well, yeah, I guess I'll wrap it up. I'll make sure I note links to obviously some of the science with simples we do with you, Josh, and obviously the paleontology episode we do with you, Wayne. And we'll definitely have to do another one of these in the future, both about religion, politics, all those sort of other interesting things, and more about sciencey stuff. So really appreciate you guys coming on again. And yeah.
Josh, I'm doing thumbs up. I know there's no relevance in the podcast.
Just to me, even though we'll talk after the podcast, I hope. But
no, I'm out.
Out forever.
I'm done.
All right,
I don't live with you.
You don't live with me. No, we don't watch anime most nights. No. All right then. Well, thanks again, guys. And that's the end of the podcast. Thanks as always for tuning in, guys. As I said at the start, even though I released this as a standalone episode, it is technically part 2 of a chat. So if you enjoyed this one and haven't listened to the other part, make sure you go listen to that. It's just going to be the episode before this one. It's about superpowers and human culling and that sort of thing. Next week will be a release of an episode that I've had recorded for a little while. It's a friend of mine called Steve, and he's basically a homosexual, and he talks about what it was like growing up gay, the sort of struggles that he went through and things like that, especially because he's a bit older than I am. I actually know him because he's a friend of my brother and sister-in-law. So he's in his mid to late 30s, and he was basically talking about how when he was that age, people didn't talk about being gay. It wasn't taught in schools, and I believe it was 1967, I think it was, the late 60s, early 70s, where homosexuality was actually illegal in England until that point. So that is really not that long ago. Obviously from now it's about 51 years. So it's like, it was so recent from when he was growing up, about 30-ish, 25 years ago. Then it's very interesting to hear the perspective of what it was like growing up in a school and things like that. And he also speaks about homosexuals had like their own language called Polari. It's like a theatrical slang. It's all very, very interesting, and it's a really, really good podcast. Especially the people who are into the podcast that are more so about people and individuals and sort of political issues and social change and that sort of thing. Because he also worked with quite a few groups that are trying to like break out and No Limits and these sorts of things, which he hasn't worked with No Limits, but he worked with Breakout. They're now part of No Limits, but like he's worked with organizations that are trying to help youths that are in the LGBTQ plus community. So, you know, really good podcast coming up next week. If you enjoyed this podcast, make sure you listen to the last one. I think that's really everything, guys. Thanks as always for tuning in, and be sure to like us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, that sort of thing. Review us on iTunes if you feel like it deserves it. Even if you can't be bothered to write a review, if you just go on the podcast app, click 5 stars, that would make me so incredibly happy. You know, I release this for free. I'm not asking for any money or anything like that. If anyone does have the time and does feel like it deserves a review, that'd be really, really appreciated. But, you know, if you can't be bothered or you don't think it deserves it, that's completely fine. Just want to kind of throw it out there just to remind people, especially at the end of the podcast. But yeah, thanks as always for tuning in, guys. I really appreciate everyone listening, especially right to the very end. And I'll talk to you next week.